Good morning, Asphalt Life community and our Atlas contractors and contractors from every angle. So, good morning to you all. Happy Wednesday. So glad you guys are with us for another edition of our Wednesday webinar series. Super excited to have some of our friends from Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, or as we like to call you guys, IBHS. We got Fred Malik here with us. Hey, Fred, good morning. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Tiara. How are you?
I'm great. It's a Wednesday. It's beautiful out, and we're still partially quarantined. We're coming into the office a little bit. Some of us working remote, and we're kind of figuring everything out. So I know you're at your home office today, right?
Yeah, we've been working remote for several months now. We're not back out there yet, but hopefully it's not an unattractive background to be looking at.
It looks good. You got fortified, all your awards. I need to find me some awards I can put on the back of my walls. My husband may not like that though. But yeah, I like it. And so Paul from Atlas is here. Paul's our product manager from Atlas Roofing and one of my favorite people to talk product with. And so when we talk about products, StormMaster Shake comes to mind. And Paul, you are one of the leading minds behind getting that together. I'm excited to have you on the webinar today.
Hey, well, thank you. Good morning, Tiara. Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, and so community, so glad you guys are on. I see we have lots of people coming into the chat, and we have more people coming in waiting in the queue. So if you can hear us, you can see our faces. Good morning to you. So glad that you're on. You can communicate with us during this webinar, and we love that we engagement and communication. We actually highly encourage it. So make sure when you're on these webinars that you jump on, put something in the chat. Say hello, good morning. Let us know that you can hear us loud and clear. What's the weather where you are? Are you still social distancing? Are you done social distancing? How is it going out there, guys? Let me know in the chat. Or you can just say good morning, whatever works. Brandon Howard says it's raining in Houston. All right. So rainy day, good day for a webinar. Learn something. Awesome. Great. Things are going great. Awesome. Glad to see it. I'm glad you guys are on. Good morning from St. Louis. Scott Karras is in the building. Glad to have you on, Scott. Yeah, so we got a really power-packed webinar today. If you are not aware, if you haven't gone and checked out Hail Trace or done any kind of storm updates, the storm season is here. It's upon us. We've had markets like Austin and Florida, hurricanes hitting as far into the city as Detroit. And so hail, wind, storms is serious and it's happening, and we want to be prepared, not just to know how to sell proper products to your homeowners, but also to know what stands behind your products that you're offering. And so today I'm super excited because Fred and Paul are going to be jumping into really storm season and what qualifies for IBH's hail testing, their ratings, their win ratings, and how they, put a lot of different testing into that. Fred's going to be going through that, and Paul's going to be breaking down the muscles behind the Atlas StormMaster Shake product and why it has outran the competition, which we're really, really proud of. So let's jump into today's agenda. So let's start with, today we're going to start with the problem, talking about some of the issues that we're seeing in the marketplace, going into solving with research, how research helps to identify and solve those problems, how Atlas can help, jumping into a little bit of our core 4 enhanced products. We'll talk about the fortified roof products, what components specific to Atlas actually are fortified qualified and what their hail, high wind, and hurricane testing is and does. And then we'll talk about the WIIFM, which, Fred, tell me a little bit about that acronym.
Yeah, that's the what's in it for me. You know, when I was a full-time contractor, I always wanted to make sure I understood what was in it for me, how it was going to help my business, how it was going to help my customers. And that's what I'm going to spend a little bit of time at the end of the presentation, making sure that that's crystal clear to folks.
Yeah, we all like to win, right? And so if we can come away from this with a strong takeaway, that makes it even better. So love it. So next up, I want to talk a little bit. So Fred, I know that you are a general contractor. And Claudette, if you can just hit that next slide for me. Fred is managing director in a building contractor. He works at Fortified. And how long have you been with IBHS and Fortified?
I've been with IBHS for 10 years, and I came on board to manage and run the Fortified program. And since I've arrived, we've been able to expand it into a number of states countrywide and expand our product line to include hail, high wind, hurricane, and Fortified commercial.
Awesome. Yeah. And I know outside of that, you're actually a general, we were talking earlier, you're a general contractor as well. You're still licensed. And tell us a little bit about one of the cool projects that you worked on. Looks like it's behind you.
Yeah, sure. So right over my shoulder here, you can see a little brag frame there. I have had the good fortune in my career to build a number of homes for television shows, and one of them that I got the opportunity to build was this extreme makeover home, 6,000 square foot home that we built in 96 hours. We had 5,000 volunteers work on that house, and we helped a very nice lady in the Orlando area that had 5 children and ran a nonprofit, and so we were able to give her a new home and a place to run her nonprofit out of. It was pretty cool.
96 hours. That is ambitious. That's crazy. Yeah. So if we ever need a quick turnaround on a job, we can ask you for tips for sure.
Yeah, so we took a production schedule that was normally measured in days, and we had it down to minutes and hours to complete tasks. It was definitely a coordinated and team effort.
Fun times. And then Paul, Claudette, let's talk a little bit about Paul. Paul is our product manager for the Shingles and Underlayment division here at Atlas. And Paul, you've been with Atlas for 5-6 years now, 7 years?
Yeah. Just ending up coming the end of the year, which it seems to be coming quicker and quicker. Is going to be the end of 6 years. So close to working on the start of 7.
Yeah, and you have been so instrumental in terms of Atlas turning that corner with innovation. You work really closely with our innovation team down in our Hampton plant, and ideas like HP42, concepts like Core 4 technology have really been your babies over the last couple of years. And so, but one of the most interesting things about you is that you've never had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Yeah,
Paul.
So it's probably a little bit shocking to a lot of people, but I just never have. And people ask me all the time when they know, well, why don't you just have one and you don't have to talk about it. So, well, now I want to talk about it, right? So, I mean, that's really the only thing I have. That's really, really exciting. So, I'm going to stick with it.
Guinness Book of World Records for not eating PB&Js,
Yep.
So fun.
It is a little strange when people hear about that, for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Well, guys, so excited to have you on today's webinar. I just want to encourage our listening audience, jump in, ask questions, post questions, comments. Let's get engaged with today's webinar. And with that, Fred, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Tiara. Thank you, Paul, and the rest of the Atlas team. Thank you to your roofer audience that is on with us today. I take as Tiara mentioned, I take a little bit of time just to sort of walk through the problem. Not that this is a new problem or something that you guys aren't familiar with, but I want to just try to put some numbers behind the issues that drive what we do here at IBHS and what we're trying to mitigate through the Fortified program. So we'll start here with just a couple of slides about the magnitude of the problem. there's been $14 billion on average. Hail losses between 2000 and 2019 have averaged between $8 and $14 billion in losses. That's families that are displaced, disrupted, and having to deal with the financial consequences of hailstorms. Let's go ahead to the next one. Not only do we have dollar values that are increasing in terms of claim, but claim frequency and claim value is on a sharp rise. So that there's more people being impacted by these natural disasters, and the severity of the claim, the amount of disruption and financial loss is also going up significantly. Let's go to the next one. The unfortunate reality is that when it comes to losses, we know that the roof is one of the most vulnerable systems. 70 to 90% of the losses that are experienced start with roof damage. And that's why we spend so much time at IBHS looking for solutions and reaching out to the roofing community to try and offer up the best science, the most cutting edge science we can to help drive that number down. Let's go to the next one. And finally, just to wrap it up with another big number, these numbers sometimes are really even just hard to get your head around. There have been more than $50 billion climate disaster events since 2015. So that's sort of the scope of the problem. It runs across the country. It doesn't really matter where you live. You're going to face some sort of weather catastrophe at some point. As Tierra alluded to earlier, we had a hurricane earlier this year, or at least a tropical storm that went all the way up into Wisconsin for the first time ever. So these issues and problems are real, and we need to dig in and do something about it. Let's go ahead to the next one. So what we do at IBHS, we like to say that we solve these kinds of problems, or we work to solve these kinds of problems through research. If this is not the first time you've heard of IBHS, you may already be familiar with this, but if it is the first time you're learning about us, we have a unique way of looking at these issues, and we can bring some pretty unique resources to bear. We have our research facility in Richburg, South Carolina. It's a $40 million facility, and what we're going to talk about today is how you can leverage, as roofing contractors, that level of investment, the $40 million that we've invested, plus the cost we have to keep doing our other research and administer our programs. You can take advantage of that. And by the way, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not asking you to buy a subscription to Fortified or pay for anything other than some modest fees here and there to do some training that help us keep bringing this world-class stuff to you and letting you use it with your customers. But we solve these problems. We investigate these problems through research. And one of the more current things that we're looking at is this issue of hail. Unfortunately, hail sometimes doesn't get the attention that it deserves because it's not really a threat to life safety, but it is a threat to property. And you guys see that every day. And maybe not in every case, it's not an unwelcome thing, right? It drives business. I get it. But there's things that we can do that can help minimize the amount of loss that people experience. Let's go ahead to the next one. So what IBHS does is in terms of hail, is we go out to the field, we collect realistic hail samples, we measure them, we 3D map them, we even invented a technology to recreate natural hail in a laboratory environment. And we developed our own proprietary test that looks at hail damage so that we can really more accurately assess what the likelihood is that a product, particularly an asphalt roofing product, will perform, how it will perform in real world conditions. If you're familiar with conventional testing, class 4, that's a steel ball. There aren't too many steel balls that fall from the sky. And steel balls don't spread out like natural hailstones. They don't have hard impacts and soft impacts. And unfortunately, the damage that gets evaluated from a class 4 test actually happens on the backside of the shingle. So you can't even see it in the real world. It's a test that really doesn't test realistically. But it's been servicing the industry for a while, and now we have some better information to bring some new technology to bear. So last year we undertook the development of this new test. We tested a whole series of impact rated products, and shocker, maybe not to everybody, but Atlas came out on top. Their StormMaster Shake product performed exceedingly well in all three categories that we look at: dents and ridges, tears, and granule loss. Paul's going to talk to you here in just a few minutes about the technology involved in accomplishing that kind of performance. But one of the things that I want to make sure that we leave you with before we hand it off to Paul and come back a little bit later to talk more about Fortified is that really what we're trying to do here is not, is not to expose flaws in anybody's product, but to really just give a better description of what the likelihood is of how the product's going to perform in real world environments. And so Atlas has taken the lead on developing highly durable products, not just the shingles, but the accessories that go along with that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul to talk a little bit about the Core 4 products.
Great, thanks, Fred. That's it's very exciting what you guys are doing at IBHS. You guys are definitely leading our cutting edge technology, leading innovation in terms of science to understand hail impacts, understand how it affects the roof and the roof system. And what you guys are doing by actually simulating and understanding and researching real hail and how that impacts things, I think it's I think it's exciting for the industry for sure, and to ultimately make better products. So we certainly appreciate what you guys are doing. But you mentioned, and you showed that slide there just a minute ago, how Atlas was on top of your latest ratings that you guys put out when you did do the measurements in the hail study that you guys brought all the shingles in-house with. And a lot of the people on this call or this watching this presentation might ask themselves, and probably the natural question is, well, how does Atlas do it? So what are they doing different that their shingle can outperform everybody else's shingle? And I'm gonna get into that here in a few minutes, but the main reason why our product is performing better than everybody else's is we made a transition from standard SBS polymers, so standard SBS asphalt that's been used in the industry for impact rated shingles for the last 20-25 years. And we said to ourselves a few years ago, how can we make this better? So we've actually enhanced our polymer technology, and we have a proprietary formulation for our polymer now that really innovates the whole concept of class 4 and impact rated shingles. We've gone from SBS to a brand new enhanced polymer technology within our shingle. So Claudette, if you can switch the slide, please. So we're really getting down into the asphalt itself, So like I said, we've spent many years, probably the last 3 or 4 years, trying to innovate asphalt, trying to get it more durable, trying to get it to perform a little bit better than standard shingles, certainly in impact and high wind areas. And we came out with a formulation that actually that enhances the shingle and performance in really 4 different ways. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So, there's a lot of technology in this polymer, and we kind of define it and go to market with 4 pillars of performance is really what we're going after here. So really by changing the structure, the dynamics, and the formulation of the polymers with a proprietary enhanced polymers, we have 4 pillars of performance. So Polycore, I talked about a little bit with the enhanced polymer. We have FlexCore, WeatherCore, and ThermalCore. And I'm going to talk about each one of those and how we perform and some of the characteristics that go into the shingle. So next slide, please. So the second pillar, we talked about Polycore. The second pillar of innovation and performance is FlexCore. So when you typically install shingles, your everyday laminates, maybe some 3-tabs, you can see they might be a little bit stiff. Maybe the asphalt is oxidized, depending on the age of the shingle. But with the polymer that we're using now, we have built in here FlexCore technology, so you can actually roll this shingle up and let it go, and it'll unroll itself. It gives it a lot more flexibility. And this is really important when you're installing in colder weather. So a lot of typical shingles out there, you can't install 30 degrees, 40 degrees or lower. On this product, you can actually install it down to 0 degrees, and you still have that flexibility and pliability that it'll actually go on the roof. You guys will be able to manipulate it and then hammer it down. So there's some flexible properties in this shingle down to 0 degrees. The third pillar. So next slide. The third pillar is thermocore. This is really where we're getting right before we get into weather. You know, this shingle, because of the asphalt makeup and the Core 4 technology and the polymers, is able to handle thermal shock a lot better than a standard laminate shingle will. And, you know, that might sound like a lot, but I'll put it into a pretty good example here. So every shingle goes through thermal shock: cold weather, cold nights, warm nights. You know, but, you know, where you can really relate this to is if you can imagine a hot summer day like it is today, depending on where you are in the country, it can be, you know, anywhere from 80 degrees to 100 degrees. And if a rainstorm comes through and instantly snaps your roof temperature down from 130 degrees, right, that's what your roof temperature might be, down to 70, 75 degrees, that's thermal shock. So your shingle, your roof, your house, it expands and contracts with different weather. And what happens to shingles is that with thermal shock and the ability not to expand and contract, you'll lose granules. So you have enhanced granule loss. With this technology we have here in Core 4 technology, it actually holds the granules better. They get embedded into the asphalt better. The asphalt, just by nature, because of the polymers, is actually going to hold on to those granules. And it has the ability to actually flex. So you can, if you've ever seen one of our samples of this Core 4 asphalt, you can pull it apart and let it go and it'll snap back together. So there are some thermal properties in there that allows for better thermal expansion and contraction than you do off of typical shingles, and that will directly relate to the longevity of your shingle by not losing those granules. So that's a very important and exciting pillar of innovation. And then the next one, Claudette. You know, the one that gets probably talked about the most is when you talk about impact rated shingles is the weather core, right? So, you know, how does it stand to impacts? And we put these slides last on purpose because I think we have some other attributes that we want to get out there to introduce to everybody, and then we can fall back on weather core that a lot of shingles claim to have. This is the only shingle, StormMaster Shake Shingles by Atlas are the only shingle that carries up to 150 mile an hour wind warranty. So you can use 130 out of the box with only 4 nails. If you want a 150 wind warranty, there are some installation requirements using hip and ridge, Atlas hip and ridge, as well as 4 nails in starter, or actually 6 nails in starter, and you can get up to 150 mile an hour wind warranty. And again, it does pass the UL 2218 Class 4 impact rating that Fred mentioned a little bit earlier, which is the industry standard. So next slide, please. You know, people might ask, you know, how can you get away with 130 with 4 nails and 150 mile an hour wind warranty on a shingle? So we do things a little bit differently. Again, when we design our shingles, anywhere from StormMaster to any other brand that we offer, we try to do things a little bit different than what's happening in the market. And we put 2 sealant lines on the front face of the shingle, and we have 2 fast tack sealant lines. And what that does is on typical competitive shingles, or some shingles you might see in the market, or even the 3-tab shingles, you'll see the sealant typically on the back side of the shingle. And when you do that, when you lay your courses up the roof, you're overlaying that laminate fast tack line, or that laminate line, that sealant line, on top of granules on your courses as you're going up. And over time, you know, your shingles will shed those granules, and you'll actually lose some performance out of those shingles as they age and as they deteriorate. What we have done in all of our laminate shingles, and StormMaster in particular, is put a double sealant line on the front face of the shingle. So when we seal, when you're building your roof courses up the deck there, you're actually sealing directly the fiberglass of the shingle that you lay on top of it. So it doesn't have to fight through granules to actually get that adhesion and that bond you're getting a true bond directly to the fiberglass. So the meat and the structure of any shingle is going to be your fiberglass base layer, and then everything gets added on top of it. So if you can bond directly to that, you're going to get a lot of performance out of your shingle, and that's what we've incorporated here. So next slide. And again, we always fall back on the Class 4 rated impact shingle. It does have the highest rating for impact rating according to UL 2218. We do have a Class 4 impact rating on this shingle. So this shingle gives you a lot of features, a lot of things that you might not even be aware of or probably never even thought of when it comes to impact rated or high performance shingles on the market today. With our Core 4 technology, we do have those 4 pillars of performance. So we have a unique proprietary polymer design. We have the weather core here, of course, which gives you the 150 mile an hour wind warranty as well as a Class 4 impact rating. We have the thermal core, right, for expansion and contraction, and we have the flex core as well on there. So there's a lot of technology that actually goes into this. So you wrap all this together. We came out with this just a few years ago as we enhance our product line, trying to make things better and better and better with innovation. You can go to the next slide. And then we just, we just want to reiterate the real performance of this product. We can say from a marketing standpoint, from a product management standpoint, from a sales standpoint, what we believe as a company, but really it's what IBHS is doing as a research center and facility. This is an independent testing. They took, as far as we know, they took shingles just as you would out of distribution, or maybe they called the manufacturer and had them shipped in, but this is independent testing that no manufacturer had any control or input on, and this is how we performed coming out of that test. So we are very happy with the technology and the time that we put into designing this new StormMaster shake with Core 4 technology. And we think that this is just going to be the continuing evolution of shingles and shingle performance, and we are on the cutting edge of product performance as well, if you guys have used our product. And then finally, just to round out my small presentation here, if you go to the next slide, Claudette, we do have Scotchgard in our shingles as well, in our laminate shingles for Pinnacle Pristine, StormMaster, StormMaster Shake, StormMaster Slate. And this allows you a real peace of mind that your roof will not get algae over time. I know that's not really what this conversation is about, but this is also built into that StormMaster Shake shingle line, as well as is the power and branding and benefits that Scotchgard has to offer. So with that, that's kind of rounding out my presentation. I'll let Tiara handle the questions as they come up. But I really want to pass this, or actually thank IBHS for what they're doing previously with the hail study and what they're actually going to talk about now with the fortified roofing system. This is an opportunity to set you guys apart, to be experts in your field, to give you guys something that's really going to perform. There's a lot of testing and research going behind the fortified program, and we certainly stand behind IBHS in their efforts in trying to launch these programs. So with that, Fred, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Yeah, Tiara and Claudette, I'm not sure if there are any questions that you want to handle now, so I'll just ask that.
No, we are good to go for now, but yeah, as the questions come in, guys, I will continue to interject them.
Okay.
All right, awesome. So yeah, and Paul mentioned something critical that I sort of glossed over. The difference between a researcher and a product guy, right? So the researchers would have gone way into the weeds on the testing, and me, I'm ready to get to the performance. But the long and short of it is, Paul's absolutely right that we bought material right off the distribution shelves. We didn't take it off the manufacturing line, which is one of those things we wanted to see what the performance would be after the product had been through the distribution chain. And then we, one of the things that I also should have mentioned is in that sky shot of the research center, there are a bunch of roofs in the foreground. Don't worry about going way back. There are a bunch of roofs in the foreground, and those, that's an aging farm that we have. So not only do we test the product once we get it from distribution, we install it on a roof out in our aging farm, and every 5 years we take that product back off the roof and we put it back into the test chamber, back into the hail testing, so that we can see what the longevity and what the performance over time is after the product has experienced some of those things that Paul was talking about, like thermal shock and those kinds of things. So, when somebody is able to earn the top spot on our test, it really does mean that they're doing something that is significant. And while IDHS is material agnostic, I'm not explicitly endorsing Atlas, we do like to shine a light on manufacturers and products that do offer durability, because it takes professionals like you all who are roofing contractors to get educated about the products that you sell, so that you can take that forward and help your customers make good informed decisions to get the results that they're looking for. So now, as we transition back into talking about Fortified and what else we do, the slide that you're looking at now, we're going to talk a little bit about the necessity to not just put on a good quality roof cover, but the other accessories that go along with it that actually make something a fortified roof system. And so one of the other big drivers of loss everywhere in the United States comes from wind and wind-driven rain. And one of the things that we'll talk a little bit about is how you can use accessories to achieve something called a sealed roof deck. And why is a sealed roof deck important? Well, a deck that has standard underlayment, 15-pound felt that's just hand tacked in place, if over time the shingle wears and weakens, like Paul was saying, the sealant happens to let go, and that cover comes off, then the underlayment goes right with it. And then what ends up happening is tons and tons of water flow into that house. And that can lead not to structural loss, but to things like this, massive water intrusion. So we've done studies, and 60% of the water that hits an exposed roof deck, so in other words, the underlayment has been lost, 60% of that water is going in the house. So the house stops being a house and becomes a bucket. And that's no place that anybody wants to be. But using some of the techniques that we're going to talk about in Fortified, coupled with high quality wind resistant shingle, you can help to prevent up to 95% of that water from getting in, even if the roof cover is lost.
Fred, you bring up an amazing point, which is one that speaks to the bigger thing from a selling and really education perspective for a homeowner. The roof kind of keeps everything with the house together, right? If you lose the roof during a storm, everything else is definitely going to fall. But if you can keep the roof tight, then it's more likely for you to be able to take advantage of salvaging that home as well. Yeah,
and listen, guys and gals that may be on the call, we're not trying to put re-roofing, we're not trying to put folks out of business or prolong the amount of time that it is between re-roofing jobs. Shingles are going to wear, and over time they're exposed to the elements. So re-roofing is never going to go away. It's always going to be there. But what we can do is we can make sure that folks can limit what they have to repair to the exterior of the building, and keep them in their home, and keep them able to continue on with their life while those other repairs are going on. So please don't take away from this presentation that we're trying to put roofers out of business or reduce your cash flow. We certainly aren't, but we do think that there's some opportunities to put some different things together and put together a high performance system that can serve your customers really well and lead to lots of referrals for you. So let's go ahead to the next slide. So this is just an example of one of the many demonstrations we can do in that test chamber. You saw it from the exterior. The primary test chamber that we have is large enough that we can build full-size single-family homes inside, and we can produce Category 3 winds. We can produce 8 inches of rain an hour. We can recreate natural hail. We've done a demonstration with 10,000 realistic hailstones on a house. We can also do wildfire. And we have done this demonstration demonstrating the effectiveness of a fortified roof, even in the event of shingle loss. And this gives you some expectation of what your customers would get. So on the right-hand side, the green side is the fortified roof. On the left-hand side, the blue side, that's a more typical common roof. And with the sealed roof deck in place and some of the other features that we're going to talk about here shortly, the damage was limited to just $5,400 on the right-hand side, and the interior was preserved. By contrast, on the left-hand side, the value of the loss was 300% greater. And what drove that loss was the water that got inside the house, damaging the interior of the home and the personal property that was in there. The things that make the priceless things that make a house a home were also lost. So just wanted to give you a sense of when you're talking about this with your customer and talking and selling it to your customers, this is the kind of performance that you can point to that has been demonstrated under realistic situations. Let's go ahead to the next one. So we've talked a little bit about fortified. You maybe ask yourself, well, what is it? If you haven't heard me speak before, I've had the good opportunity, the good fortune of presenting in one of these webinars last year. But if you haven't heard of us or you haven't seen our stuff before, we have 3 building standards, essentially. We have a hurricane standard, which is appropriate for anybody who's in a coastal area. We have a high wind standard, which is for everybody else. So if you're more than a mile away from the coast, you're pretty much going to be in the high wind area, unless you happen to live in Florida. And if you are in an area where it is hail prone, you can use our new hail supplement with the high wind standard to achieve a fortified hail designation. So there's the roof system is the primary system that we work with. Every fortified home has to have a fortified roof. So really, when it comes down to it, roofers like you are the key to anybody living in a fortified home in the United States. Let's go ahead to the next one. So in the standard, there are some detailed things that have to be dealt with, but it really can be boiled down into 4 simple things if you're going all the way to the hail designation. The first one is to keep that roof deck on. So if you're re-roofing a home, we do ask you to check the nail spacing and the attachment to the roof deck. We have some prescriptive guidance on how the deck needs to be re-nailed if it's required. Essentially, if you're in a high wind area and the fasteners are more than 6 inches apart, you're going to end up needing to put some new fasteners in. We require 8D ring shank nails. Not a significant cost increase in terms of the nail cost. They all fit in the standard gun net and the standard guns. So re-nailing the deck really doesn't add any significant amount of cost. The next thing that is important and required is keeping the water out, and that's a sealed roof deck. We have 3 different ways that can be accomplished from the top side. You can use a tape applied directly to the deck and then cover it with one of the Atlas superior performing underlayments, or you can use a fully adhered membrane across the entire deck. Those 2 things are available to you. And the third method is applying a 2-ply system, no tape required, just the 2 plies in a fashion that we describe in our standard, and that performs exceedingly well as well. The key for the underlayment attachment in those cases is button cap nails. Using button cap nails and putting them in at a pretty rigorous nailing schedule will ensure that underlayment stays intact even when the wind is able to get at it if the roof cover fails. Step 3 is keeping the edges locked down. So using a starter strip and drip edge. For those of you who may not know a lot about the science of how roofs weather storms, there's a lot of pressure that gets applied to a roof, and the highest pressures are at the eaves and at the rakes. And so keeping those materials intact at the edge really is the key to keeping that roof intact. And so we do require the use of drip edge and starter strips at the eaves and up the rakes. And then finally, if you are going for a hail designation, using a shingle from the IBHS tested list gets you access to the hail designation. If we have not tested a particular product, then we default back to class 4. But for all the products that we have tested that are on that list, the easiest way to get to that fortified designation is to use one of the good or excellent products, and certainly Atlas is at the very top of that list. Let's go to the next slide. So let's walk through how the products that Atlas has, some of the products that Atlas has, can be used as a system to get to a fortified designation. I hope this diagram is somewhat familiar to you. It's used with Atlas's permission, but it is one that is used to describe the Signature Select warranty that you guys have access to. And so I'm going to step you through the different components of the roof system and the accessories that Atlas offers that can be used to get to a fortified roof. So let's go ahead and hit the first button there. So the first thing, as I mentioned, is deck attachment, making sure that the roof deck is in good condition. It's a good substrate, standard business practice for everybody, but making sure that the nails are at a close enough spacing, and if new nails are needed, using 8D ring shank nails to make that happen. Next thing, so we don't require a special use of underlayment at the eave. The WeatherMaster Ice and Water Shield can be used to seal the roof deck if you apply it to the entire roof deck. That's not necessarily the best option in every place of the country because of the different weather patterns and the different levels of humidity, different places. So you can combine two different systems depending on what your needs are. But the WeatherMaster Ice and Water Shield can be used to seal the roof deck. Let's go to the next one. I mentioned before that one of the other very popular systems that we have is tape applied to the deck and then covered with a high-performing underlayment. So what do I mean by high-performing? No 15-pound felts are allowed. It's got to be a number 30 felt, ASTM D226 Type 2 or ASTM D4869 Type 4. Has to explicitly say that on the packaging. Or a comparable synthetic underlayment, like we have with the underlayments that are listed here. So those products combined with the tape on the deck, fastened with button caps, get you a really good sealed roof deck. Next slide. So then here we can use the Pro Cut starter shingles at the eaves and up the rake to get a nice connection to from the roof cover itself down through the starter strip onto the underlayment and into the drip edge on down to the deck, keeping those edges secure. And then finally, the last two steps would be the shingles. Let's go to the next one. So, Paul has talked about some of the shingles, and so we have a wind rating requirement. If all your customer is interested in achieving is either a hurricane designation or a high wind designation, then the only thing that we really need to know is what is the wind rating of the shingle. If they want to go for the hail designation as well, then they would use one of the StormMaster products, and they could achieve the fortified hail designation. In hurricane-prone areas as well, we do pay attention to the next thing, which is the attic ventilation system. Let's go ahead and advance one more time. So the ridge vents, we do scrutinize whether those are capable of keeping wind-driven rain out. I think this is a new and exciting addition to Atlas's product line here, but making sure that you have a vent that is not susceptible to wind-driven rain is the final piece of the hurricane roof. Not as critical on the high wind side, but I just wanted to let you know that these accessories packaged together do get you from a material perspective across the finish line by and large for fortified. Now, let's go to the next slide. In addition to using good products like what we just talked about, there are other elements that we do collect so that we can make sure that the homeowner is going to get the performance that they're looking for, and that's a third-party verification system. And so you may be asking yourself, how does the process get started? Well, the process gets started when you talk to your client and you sell them a fortified roof system. We have lots of collateral that I'll talk about in just a second that you are free to use, including the rating sheet that you've seen already. You can use that in your sales presentations, whether they're virtual or they're actual physical brochures that you're leaving behind. We've got lots of collateral that you can tack in there. One of them is this sheet that you can see on your screen now. But when the customer tells you, I'm ready to buy a fortified roof, that kicks off the process. At that point, you need to engage with a fortified evaluator. And a fortified evaluator is an independently trained third party that they don't work for IBHS. We train them just like we train roofers to be able to collect documentation to verify how the roof was installed. So we've got the material piece, and then we've got the installation piece. The evaluator works with you as a partner. We understand the importance of pace and keeping up with the workflow and not necessarily slowing down the critical path when it comes to installation. So there are opportunities for you to collaborate with the evaluator to take pictures so that you don't have to wait for them to be there to verify each and every step. But make no mistake, it's important for some of the benefits that we're going to talk about here in just a second, that each and every step does get documented. So you can have your crews taking pictures on the roof. You build up your own installation full file, which will help you in managing your relationship with your customer. But you pass that on to the evaluator along with your proof of materials, and that gets passed on to IBHS. And once the roof is complete, that audit or the evaluation is submitted to us. I have a team of auditors that reviews all that documentation, and then we send out a certificate. And here I see you popping on, so I wonder if there's a question for us to field.
Yeah, no, this is great information. I think, obviously some of the meat of what the requirements of the program you've explained, what Atlas products within our system components, which all of them, based on what you said that you've outlined, are eligible to qualify for a fortified. One of the questions around the application process, Fred, can you talk about that? Because I know, it seems like the website says that you guys are not accepting applications. Are you guys currently accepting applications? And can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and really look at our website because no, we are 100% open for business when it comes to entertaining fortified designations. What we do currently have paused, which I will talk about in just a second, is training. COVID has disrupted our in-person training, but I'm going to talk to you about some exciting developments we have along those lines. But as far as fortified designations and using fortified in the field, there's no pause on that. Now, I had planned on talking in just a second about the third-party evaluation process and how you can connect with an evaluator. So if we go ahead and flip to the next slide, maybe I'll answer some of those questions. So I mentioned the third-party evaluation. Taking pictures is critical to verify installation. So we've got a couple different ways you can connect with an evaluator. Bottom line is that we maintain a professional directory on fortifiedhome.org. Homeowners and roofers and others can find professionals that meet that do the jobs that they're looking for them to do in our directory. And in places like Oklahoma, we are trying something new. We released the new hail designation, and in Oklahoma, there's pretty robust incentives that we're going to talk about in just a second. And we've narrowed the field there. So there's one approved evaluation company called Pilot. Roofers can call them directly after they sell a fortified job, and the process should be very streamlined and smooth. Work directly with the evaluator to collect the documentation and move things along. In places like Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina, where there are also incentives and there are lots of roofs being installed, there's a network of evaluators that we have grown over time there, and the homeowner or the roofer can contact any one of those evaluators to partner up with and collect the documentation. For folks that aren't in the states that I just mentioned, again, going to the directory, see if there's somebody there. If not, we are growing our footprint with Pilot, who can make inspectors available countrywide. And so there are opportunities for us to help you deliver fortified roofs anywhere you happen to be.
Yeah, and we have, many examples of Atlas contractors who have leveraged the fortified program in Alabama, the Carolinas. We have some Florida guys who have leveraged the program. And so I know you're going to get into the application process and some of the ways that you guys are maneuvering that. But, can talk a little bit about some of the successes that you've seen more inland with fortified and those contractors.
Yeah, so there are a couple of really exciting things that are happening, particularly in inland locations, Alabama being one. So Alabama, when we started in Alabama, there was an incentive that was developed in a grant program, both that were developed for the coastal counties due to the success there. And one of your contractors that uses your product, I think almost exclusively, if not exclusively, Ben Murphy. He's been a key ally of ours in Alabama, but because of some of the success we had there on the coast, the state mandated fortified credits and extended grants up through the rest of the state. So we're getting that kicked off. We've already got 150 roofs on the books that are in process of being installed up there. In Oklahoma, we have Oklahoma is an a completely inland state, and is one of the very few that offers a significant fortified incentive. If you have a fortified roof, and you present your customer presents a certificate, then the admitted carriers that have discounts will give you a discount on your property insurance. And so we're starting to see with the release of our hail designation last month, we are starting to see some activity in that space. So those are where we're seeing a lot of movement. We've had inquiries from Missouri, Wisconsin, Colorado, inland Texas. So there's a lot of momentum building in other inland communities as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Fred, for going into that.
Yep, no problem. Let's go ahead and flip over to the next slide. So you may be asking yourself, how do we know fortified works? You guys have done it in the test chamber, but even though you can create things pretty realistically in the test chamber, maybe when the rubber meets the road, there's not quite the same level of performance. Well, we've had a couple of instances lately where significant inventory of fortified homes have been tested. One of the more recent ones is Dorian out on the coast. We had over 1,000 fortified homes exposed to Dorian, and 99.5% of them had no water intrusion at all. And we had like 8 homeowners that had some water intrusion, but by and large, the sealed roof decks worked, and there were very few incidents. And unfortunately, when we do find water intrusion occurring, a lot of times it has to do with some installation detail that was overlooked and not really caught during the audit process. And so we constantly try to figure out ways to make sure that those kinds of things aren't repeated. But Dorian was a really good test for us. We also had homes exposed to Michael that completely survived Hurricane Michael. We had one homeowner right in Mexico Beach where you saw that complete devastation. Fortified homeowner right in the middle of that. He spent 0 days out of his house. He evacuated for 6 hours, came back, and has lived in his house ever since Michael made landfall. So we know the systems work if they are properly executed and use the right product. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So I mentioned incentives, and Alabama is one state, but Oklahoma is a really exciting one. And this is a discount flyer that is available for you to use as a contractor. If you happen to be in Oklahoma, you can download this flyer and you can include it in your sales brochure. It lists here some of the companies, because that's one of the questions we always get is which companies offer a fortified discount. You can see some local companies here, but you see big companies like Shelter and State Farm are also on this list. And discounts for just a fortified roof can get up to 42% of the wind premium. And for those of you who don't know, maybe some of you do, but for those of you who don't know, Oklahoma has the highest property insurance rates anywhere in the country that doesn't sit on an ocean. So they pay insurance at the same level that oceanfront properties pay. So 42% is real savings, and it's every single year. It's not just a one-time deal. It's every year they have a designation in place, they get that savings. So this is one of the pieces of collateral that's available to roofers who want to offer fortified roofs to their clients. Let's go ahead to the next thing. So I included this slide for a couple of reasons, because I want to give you a sense of where, what kind of magnitude, what kind of success we're having, and I also want to put a face on the kinds of people that we help. I mean, we help homeowners every single day, and we help homeowners that live in modest homes, right on up to multi-million-dollar oceanfront properties. The guy on the right is our CEO, Roy Wright. The gentleman on the left is a newly fortified homeowner. He lives in upstate Alabama. He was our 15,000th designation, and that occurred at the beginning of this year in January. We're already approaching 20,000 designations, and by the end of the year, we'll be we'll be over 22,000 designations in fortified. So the pace of participation is escalating. We now designate over 500 homes a month in our program. So roofers and others are finding value and finding ways to deliver a different level of service and expertise to their customers, and it's paying off. Let's go ahead on to the next thing. So this is the what's in it for me. We're closing out on this, and keep in mind that this is, this is just an overview. There's lots of opportunities to learn more about the nuances and the details of the program. So we're just trying to give you a broad overview. But one of the more important questions, if I'm considering it as a contractor, is what's in it for me? How do you help me in my business? So here's a couple of things that we've talked about. A recent article in Roofing Contractor Magazine, August 2019, they talked about 3 things that roofers can do to earn business. One is build trust and be an educational resource. More than a third of people who are calling you are starting their roofing search, and they don't have any clue about what goes into putting on a roof or what it's going to cost. And so that's a real perfect opportunity for you to demonstrate, hey, not only do I know how to put on this material, I stay up to date and current on cutting edge science, like the science that's being done by IBHS. And again, this is not a product I'm selling you. I'm not asking you to pay hundreds or thousands of dollars for lead generation or anything like that. I'm just asking you to become aware and to use it. There are some inspection fees. They're modest. In Oklahoma, for example, it is $300 to get that inspection done. But IBHS does not use it, operate it as a profit center. All of those, the majority of those fees are just paying other people for their time to help with the documentation process. So there's that building trust and being an educational resource, being an expert in your field. Second thing is that most people don't know what a roof costs. 75% when they start their roof search, they have no idea what their roof costs. So it's a really great opportunity for you to present options. Here's a standard roof, here's a mid-range roof, and here's a fortified roof. And here's how we can offer you these different accessories to get you to that point. And then, of course, if you're doing something like using the Signature Select products, you've got that warranty from Atlas and the certificate potentially coming from IBHS, and they can translate that into insurance savings as well. So there's really a lot of extra benefit that comes along with it. And then finally, when you walk into a sales presentation, your sales team is sitting down with a client, you can talk about how, if you're participating in fortified and you're offering fortified roofs, you can talk about, hey, I not only do I keep up to date on the science in this industry, but I voluntarily use a company to validate my work and to document my work. So anyway, demonstrate you go above and beyond. I know we're getting close on time, so let's go ahead into some of the other things that are available to you. So we've got ads and social media campaigns that are actively out there ginning up interest in fortified. You can use these things in your own social media and advertising. Let's go to the next one. We have training. This is something I'm really excited about. In July, the week of July 17th, we are launching virtual training. We've done it in person before. You may have heard of some of the training we do. Sometimes it's inconvenient, it's hard to get out of the field. We're now gonna make that training virtual, and you'll have the opportunity to send your staff. And if you wanna be listed in our directory, you can take an exam in that virtual environment, and successfully pass the exam, you go into the directory. So July 17th, put that on your calendar, go to fortifiedhome.org. You can sign up to get alerts when those classes are made available. Let's go to the next one. I just talked about registering for the training, fortifiedhome.org/training. There's a little thing there. And if you sign up for alerts, we don't sell those lists. We don't market those lists. You're not going to start getting random phone calls and solicitations.
And guys, we're putting these in the chat as well. So the fortifiedhome.org as well as the marketing links are all in the chat for you to reference.
All right, let's go to the last. I think that might be the last one, or maybe one more.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So
yeah,
right there we are.
And so Fred, this is awesome. A couple more questions I want to make sure we are addressing. first of all, thank you so much for this webinar. And guys, we're going to go about 5 more minutes, and then to make sure we can get all of your questions answered. I'm sure if a couple of you are asking the same questions and all of you are. So a couple points that I would like you to address. In terms of price difference, you mentioned that there's about $300 in cost, in additional costs. What is the standard price difference if a contractor is installing a system? We talked about most of the Atlas products are system compliant for the fortified certification. But what additional costs are involved from enrollment to actually selling the product to a homeowner?
So if you decide to get trained and you want to be listed in the directory, the training cost and the exam fee is a total of $150. And that's good for a 1-year certification or a credential. The inspection fee that we talked about, generally the average is somewhere around $300. In Oklahoma, it's a flat fee that's there. We do charge a $45 fee to review evaluations, but that's all rolled into the inspection fee. The evaluator pays that fee. In terms of material installation, it really depends on what you're already selling. So as you mentioned, the material, if you're already using the materials that we talked about for Signature Select, from a material perspective, the only things different are the tape on the deck, if you choose to use that system, and the renailing of the deck. That's about it. And that can be as little as $500 on a roof, can go up to maybe 12, 15, 1,600 bucks, depending on the roof and the other products that you're selecting.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Awesome. And just, in terms of the $150, if you're an Atlas contractor and you're interested in getting trained, we will allow you to use your Atlas bucks towards this. So this is certainly something that we believe in. We believe in offering the best to homeowners around the country. So if you're looking to get trained and certified, sign up. Use the link to sign up. You can pay for that and then get it reimbursed through your Atlas bucks. If you have eligible Atlas bucks, you can log into your portal, submit those receipts, and definitely get that reimbursed for you. So lots of opportunity here, guys. I'm so excited about, Fred, all the great things that you guys are doing with the Fortified program, the distinguished excellent markings that our StormMaster products have received. We've just been really excited about talking to homeowners and contractors about that. So thank you again for being on today's webinar.
Yeah, and if you have questions that we didn't answer, if you want to send them to me, I'll be happy to respond to them via email.
Yes.
And make sure that
we have a slide. I think the slide before, is that with your contact information? Or if not, we can certainly send it out in the follow-up.
Yeah, I don't think I put my email address in there, but I'm happy to share contact information. So
awesome. Great. Well, we'll make sure that goes out. And guys, thanks again for joining today's webinar. Don't forget to keep live, roofing, and playing together, and we'll talk soon. Thanks. Bye. Thanks, Fred.
Bye. Thank you.